Hey everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Today is Sunday, December 22nd, and this is your weekly analysis video. A few announcements before we get into it today. There's going to be no video next week. Going to take next week off. I hope you all have a happy holiday and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and whatever else you may be celebrating. Um, Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to be working on over the next couple of weeks is completing the Square of Nine script family. We released the Square of Nine Inner Planet script, but there's still two more that I'm going to be releasing soon, probably in the next couple of days, and that includes the Square of Nine Outer for outer planets and Square of Nine Outer Synodic for synodic pairs of outer planets. So that will complete the Square of Nine set of scripts and look for those to be delivered in the next couple of days. Okay, and thinking ahead here, the next major script that I'm going to be building for you guys is going to focus on aspects to natal planets, natal locations. So just going to look at conjunctions and oppositions with natal planets. A big reason for the motivation here is simply the success that we've seen with this past week with oppositions to natal nodes. So that was a huge win this week based on some of the analysis that Margot and Ella did and shared with us. And I think there's a lot of value in extending that out beyond just the nodes to very fine-grained natal location analysis, including things like the ascendant and part of fortune. So that is on deck, and maybe that'll be my Christmas or New Year's gift to you guys, our subscribers. Um, all right. So one of the things that we're going to be doing in that natal script is taking advantage of some of the AI capabilities to identify the optimal natal date, because sometimes there's multiple choices for a natal date. For example, SPX or DJI, should we use a modern date like in the 50s for SPX or for QQQ that started trading in 1971? Should we use that 71 date? Which one's better? And the great thing is, because of the Time Trades AI platform, we can quantifiably measure which natal date is better. So I've been building that out in the background, have that capability implemented now. So there's no more guessing on what is the best natal date to use because the AI will figure it out and tell me. So I'm going to take advantage of that knowledge and embed it in this TradingView script to make it drop dead easy to get the best possible natal date and then display when transiting planets are conjunct and opposite those natal planets. Okay, so that's the update on time trades. I do want to just show this slide again. I showed it for the last month or so, and wow, did that December 19th date ever play out? So congrats again to Margot and Rashad for sharing your research on this. It played out in a big way, and we'll go and take a look at the charts now. Um, Okay, so this is where we left things off. We were forecasting a move down in large part based on that opposition to the transiting nodes opposite the natal nodes. And that resulted in a very significant sell-off on Wednesday on FOMC day and subsequent volatility. And the market is still, uncertain in terms of direction right here. You can see this giant doji that was printed on Friday, indicating uncertainty. And in general, I think my forecast for, a split forecast for either going up or going down is conceptually correct. I am going to refine it and share with you my bias on which direction I think it's going to choose, but we still need to defend against, the other alternative. So definitely going to give myself an A for this forecast. We got to drop right into the top third or so of the target box right on time. So that was a great forecast, and that was a huge day on Wednesday. Now, one of the things I wanted to um, share with you guys is, why was there no call for a pivot in the AI around this time frame? And I want to shine a light on kind of how the AI works a little bit and some of the limitations on it, and specifically around longer term data points. So right now, the AI forecasts in time trades are using daily data, and it goes back about 20 years. Okay. Um, the basis of the forecast for a move down was based on transiting nodes. Now, the nodes orbit and complete a cycle in 18.6 years. So that means um, in the 20-year data set that time trades is using, there's going to be only two um, transiting node events, whether it's conjunct or opposite. So that's not enough to influence the AI. So that's why that's not showing up here as a high probability pivot. And this is why we always want to combine our own analysis with our own neural network between our ears and with what the AI is doing. And I will be very transparent about exactly how the AI works. There's a lot of documentation on the help pages about that, so that you can understand uh, where it's strong and where some of the blind spots are in the AI. So when it comes to some of these longer term cycles that extend, beyond, I would say, like 10, 15 years, yeah, that's a blind spot in the AI the way it's currently defined. Okay. So that is something to be aware of. All right. Now, what I want to talk about is this a major top? All right. So let's go and take a look at some long-term charts here. All right. So, well, this is still a daily chart, but it's still got a lot of data on it. So this is the SPX daily. And um, what we're doing here is we're measuring basically an ABCD pattern. So here's the AB, okay, 1161 points. That's very interesting, because it's an interesting number because it's close to a fib number. And then I took this exact same range and anchored it to this April 2024 low. And of course, it's the same range. And that completes at 6,117.78. So rounded up 6,118 on the SPX. And the actual high was 6099.97, or 6,100. So we're basically within 18 points of a complete ABCD pattern over basically the year, right? So that is one interesting chart. The other one is on the NDX. Okay, so I'm using the new square of nine inner chart. You may not be familiar with how to get the most from this, so I'll walk you through it. It's anchored to the October 23 low. Price per sell is 1. And we're showing the sun as the timeline. Okay. Now, what this does is it draws a red line every 360 degrees of price around the square of 9. Okay. Starting from the anchor price, which is about 14,047. So we're seeing cycles around the square of 9, and because of how the square of 9 works, the cycles get progressively wider. And you can see up here on last week, on Monday the 16th, we made the high and tapped one of the red square of 9 cycle lines exactly. All right, so that is an indication to me that this is a significant pop, and it's something to be aware of. And you can see how these red lines have performed. They seem to be better on lows, to be honest, than highs. So you can see here in April and in August, and there was a little deviation below here in September, and also in November. It's been very, very good at lows, and that's actually where we are right here at about 20,900. All right, so this is a very interesting new tool in the toolkit. And what I've done here is I've drawn a Gann fan. And the way I draw these Gann fans, and this is why I have the sun timelines on this chart, is that I like to use the sun timelines to identify square out points. And this is where I'll anchor the Gann fan to, the one by one. I'll anchor it to the crossing of the sun timelines with the red price lines. And so as time goes by from the anchor point, I will shift the anchor point of the Gann fan accordingly. So the most recent one is over here. Over time, I will change the anchor point to shift it to the next square out point where yellow meets red. But for now, we're going to leave it here because we've got this, it tags this nice bottom here, which I quite like. The other thing that I'm thinking about in terms of making the most of the square of nine here is looking at kind of cycles of corrections, right? So if we look at this correction here on the NDX, it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 complete price cycles and maybe a half up here. So that was 5.5. So that gives us an indication if we do get a sell-off in the same scale as the one that happened in July and August, then that can give us a potential price target. So that's a big assumption, but it's another technique to put in the toolkit, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 would take us kind of down here to the low 19,000s, right? Like 18,900, 19,000 roughly. All right, so something to keep in mind on that. All right. And the next thing I want to show in terms of a lasting top is the retrogrades. Now, we talked about retrogrades earlier and how Mars retrograde created this very clean bottoming pattern back here in late 2022, and the final low in 2023 before the bull market started. So we were openly asking ourselves, okay, is this current Mars retrograde season over here kind of a bookend to this low? And in case you don't recognize this script, what we're doing here is we're using the planetary lines intercurrent script. We're converting um, uh, we're converting planetary location to price using the wheel of 24. And it's scaled at $48 per cell on the wheel of 24. And we're displaying Mars Geo so that we can see these retrograde timeframes. So we can see the retrograde timeframes down here in this little eyelid pattern. All right, so that caught the low, and we've got a similar eyelid pattern up here. And the question is this going to catch the high? So if this is a perfect mirror of this low, then there's potential for a final extreme, kind of in the second eyelid pattern, right? So there is potential, again, this is a big if. This is a speculation. If this were to be a top, and if this top were to mirror this bottom, then we could expect another high. Could be a higher high over here in the second eyelid pattern. So again, something to keep in mind. All right, so that is some of the analysis here. Now, what I want to do is take a look at the forecasts, and ask ourselves, okay, does it make sense to update those at all? So we're going to go back to here, and I'm going to um, hide the planetary lines for now, and I'm going to show our reliable no, our reliable ruler with the Mars Uranus 15. So this is our ruler outer synodic script, and it's anchored to October 26, 2023. And it's showing cycles of Mars Uranus every 15 degrees. And this has been incredibly accurate for us, identifying major pivots along the way. And I actually thought it broke down over here, but indeed it was still accurate. It just identified a pivot low, and my own bearish bias kind of it didn't compute. So again, this is why I think, the psychology of trading is probably the most important skill to master, to be able to recognize data points that don't align with your bias and not marry your bias, so that you can switch gears and take advantage of trends. But this last Mars Uranus 15 at the end of November very definitely was a pivot low, right? That was the lowest price until we got the top and this flush in the nodal opposition with the natal nodes. So our next Mars Uranus 15 is December 31st. All right. And that's right at the start of our target box. And that's not by accident. And let's also add in some of our square of nine work. Okay. So again, we've got the square of nine here, and this is anchored to December 2022. Okay. So that's our longer term cycle. And we can see how good this has been on bottoms, right? Very, very good. And it was also pretty good at the top here, and also at the top in July. There's a little deviation above, and then Mars Uranus 15 kicked in and pushed it back down. So I am biased. My bias right now, based on everything that I'm seeing, is that we take the lower path. And the reason for that is, well, there's multiple reasons. We don't see any pivots on the AI coming up in this time frame. So if we flip over to time trades, the next major area of pivots is kind of January 2nd, around there. All right. So that would tell me that the trend that's currently in place would continue until roughly then. All right. And also, this is when we have Mars Uranus 15. Okay. And even though we've got a big doji over here, which indicates some uncertainty, it doesn't really look like a bullish kind of bottoming candle, right? When we see bottoms, we don't. It doesn't look like a bullish candle to me, right? It's uncertain. So in light of the lack of pivots between now and the end of the year, I do believe the current bearish trend continues. So the other thing that I want to show here is Gann Fans, right? And we've got these Gann Fans drawn using the same technique here, anchored to December 2022. And also, you can see how I've anchored the end of it here to the crossing of a red price line and the yellow 1 by 1. All right. And we've got some very good taps here indicating that this 1 by 1 is a strong line. Okay. Now, what I like to do with the Gann Fans is I also like to combine, 2 or 3. And we can see here how this Gann Fan here, coming down from the July high, this one is anchored using different points. I'm not using the sun. I'm using synodic moon. Okay, so synodic moon is basically lunar phase. Okay, and so this is a shorter term cycle, and we've got this anchored to the July top, and then I chose somewhat arbitrarily this point here where the synodic moon crosses the red price line. And I chose it because I like the way it fits the price over in this area here. Okay. So and you can see also how, moving forward from that anchor point, it fit price very nicely over in this area in September, October. So when we take a look at this recent high from Monday, um, the we applied a similar technique where we anchored the Gann fan to the high and the next crossing of the synodic moon and the red price line. And this is what we get. So we haven't seen any sort of significant cross of a major fan yet that would cause us to flip bullish. And by major fan, I would say the 1x2 down and certainly the 1x1. Okay. And we can see over here, there was a few bullish fake outs on the way down before it completed the low in August. So I'm not in a rush to flip bullish here. I need to see more confirmation in terms of price crossing major Gann fans, like at least the 1x2 down and definitely the 1x1. So we'll wait for that. And again, this is why I'm biasing towards this lower target over here. All right. Now, in terms of time, I think one of the things that I'm going to do is just shrink this target box a little, these target boxes a little bit. I like where it starts because it starts on Mars Uranus 15. I don't like where it ends January 10th. I think that's a little wide. So I'm just going to shrink these a little bit to bring it down to like Tuesday, January 7th. And shrink it down there. So it's a little bit of a narrower time frame. And that's based on what I'm seeing in terms of the windows of pivots over here. The probability of a pivot kind of peaks around, January 2nd or so. This January 1 value here is actually a bug in the AI. There should be no trading, of course, on January 1. So I just need to update my holiday dates in the software and I'll get that fixed. So this January 1 bar will disappear. But yeah, it's really in this time zone over here. So I think January 6th, January 7th is plenty for a pivot window. All right, so that is my long-winded update on NQ. And I also wanted to share some techniques in terms of integrating Gann fans with the latest and greatest square of 9 script. I'll be back shortly with a view on Bitcoin. Thank you. Okay, we're back and looking at Bitcoin here, and we're going to really lean into the AI to make sense of this. The forecast for Bitcoin, the last major pivot was on the 18th, and you can see just how successful that forecast was. So we made the high on the 17th of about 108, and it's basically been downhill since then. So this probability of a pivot down here of about 61% worked out really, really well. So let's continue to lean into that. And if we go forward in time, we see our next pivot probability is around January 3rd. There's a pretty big spike over here of about 70% probability. Okay. So I think what this is telling me is just to be patient on the long side. That's really what I was saying last week, because hold off on the longs until we get on the backside of this pivot. And that proved to be the right strategy. Anyone that bought up here is underwater or liquidated. And on the looking ahead, I think the next opportunity to really get in would be early in the new year, January 1, January 2, around then, just before this next anticipated pivot. And we can see some big clusters of of moves here, moves down, potential for moves up as well, but these can always invert, which is why I have these the non-directional move to mitigate that inversion risk, and that is also showing a big probability of two standard deviation moves right around the new year. So this is actually another reason why my stock forecast is biasing bearish as well. And that's because we also see this cluster of big moves and pivots in Bitcoin, and of course that's a risk asset, or it's traded as a risk asset, even though the perceived risk is steadily going down. But yeah, I think there's more opportunity for on the short side than the long side, just given by the price action around these pivots here, and things could accelerate heading into the new year with potentially one of those classic Bitcoin wicks on January 2, January 3. All right, so let's go back here and we can line that up with our Gann Fan and our square of 9. So right now we've got square of 9 script. Let's show the square of 9 script. Square of 9 script. There we go. Okay, so this is anchored to September 5th. I'm showing $20 per sell. And why 20? Because this is what gives me a good square out on the Gann Fan. Okay, so I get a square out here aligning the red price line with the orange Mercury Helio line, because we know Mercury Helio is very influential on Bitcoin. I like to use Mercury Helio as the time factor. And you can see how these time factors have indicated some very significant days. And in fact, the most recent one over here, December 18th, caught this giant wick down. All right. So the next time factor coming up is January 11th. Again, another reason to be patient. Bitcoin over here, you can see that it's just trying to hang on to this price line at 95.8. It is edging below this 1 by 1, which again is not great for the bearish argument. I'm not saying that it's going to flush all the way down to the 2 by 1 here. I think that's not realistic. But I think we could see some volatility, bumping between these red price lines over the next few weeks or 2 weeks or so. As we get closer to that January 2nd, January 3rd pivot date, as well as this January 11th next time factor date using Mercury Helio. And again, I'm going to mention, as usual, using the planetary lines inner script, we have the halfway point of the Mercury Helio orbit happening on Christmas 25th, 26th. And that puts us into the second half of the Mercury Helio orbit, which is where the big moves tend to happen, moving ahead into mid-February. So some good opportunities coming up on Bitcoin. It's important to, keep your powder dry for now, and wait for some of these forecasted pivots to play out. But yeah, I think we're going to have a good run up in January, February. Just need to keep the powder dry until then. All right, that's it for me. I really wish everyone has a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all those good things. Spend some time with family, get away from the screens, and remember that everything I've talked about here is educational information and not financial advice. And always manage your own risk. We'll talk to you in the new year. Thank you. Bye now.